It is 10:13 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's the 9th day of January 2026, and this is episode 1235 of Bitcoin and Tether is going to be back in the news this morning because this is the BitcoinAnd podcast. It's all the news you can use about Bitcoin and more, and we will be beginning with Tether. Then we're going to talk about VEXL. It empowers peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange through social networks, and I'm hoping that means like all the other social networks, because with nostr, we already have all that and have had it for like 2 years. It's almost like, really? You're just now catching up? Then we're going to talk a little bit about BNY Mellon. Yeah, they're going to be in the news. Collateral services and payments. So they're catching on a little bit. And then we're going to run down to Colombia, where tax reporting requirements have been installed. Then we're going to take a trip across the Atlantic or across the Pacific, whichever is closer, to get to South Korea, because they are preparing to approve spot Bitcoin ETFs. And then on the other side of that same South Korean coin, legality of Bitcoin confiscation on exchanges is going to be talked about. And then, word to the wise, we're going to end the show with, France, where a woman has been tied up and a crypto USB has been stolen. That will be the word to the wise to, be careful out there. This is going to go, I'm going to end up saying it probably at the end of the show. Don't wear swag. Don't have Bitcoin baseball caps. Don't do that shit, man. You're putting a giant bullseye on your back. So let's go over to Tether, where they are said to have invested up to $50 million in the Bitcoin lender LEDN, LEDN. They've been around for a very long time, and they've been pretty good Joes about their Bitcoin lending. So, in fact, I was on a show a long time ago with the guy that started that company. It was the Bitcoin Meister show. If you remember who that is, then that means that you've been in the game for a very, 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 very long time. We were on that show together, and so I've known about these guys for a very long time. And this $50 million investment from Tether into LEDN has now valued LEDN at $500 million. And they came from nothing, like a lot of the good Bitcoin companies in the space. So let's get into it. It's written by Will Canny. It's out of Coindesk.com. When stablecoin issuer Tether announced a, quote, strategic investment in LEDN, a lender of stablecoins and fiat against Bitcoin collateral, in November, it chose to withhold the details of that investment. In fact, Tether paid between $40 and $50 million at a valuation of $500 million, according to a person with knowledge of the matter. Now, neither LEDN nor Tether responded to requests for comment by publication time, but Tether, whose USDT is, of course, the number one dollar peg token by market cap, has become increasingly acquisitive under CEO Paolo Ardoino, who took over in 2023. The company earns returns on the U.S. Treasuries it holds to back that stablecoin, and in October reported a 9-month profit of $10 billion. Oh my God. The LEDN investment gives it a stake in a crypto financial services company focused on letting individuals and institutions earn yield on, borrow against, and manage digital assets. Last May, the company, registered in the Cayman Islands, said that it was shifting to a Bitcoin-only model to simplify its offering and sharpen its focus. Well, okay, I got to pause there because when I was on with their chief guy, and I can't remember his name right now, on the Bitcoin Meister show, it was a Bitcoin only. They weren't doing anything else. And at that time, Tether, I think it just started. And so really nobody really knew what Tether was back in the day, and they were not into altcoins. That's why I really like that company and have liked it for years. So I'm not sure if they ever broke away from the Bitcoin only model, but hey, anything could happen. Anyway, Tether's acquisitive streak, however, extends beyond just the crypto industry. Last year, it acquired control of Adecco Agro, an operator of sugar mills, rice farms, dairy businesses, and renewable energy assets across Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. It also bought a 10% stake in Italian football club Juventus, though its offer for majority shareholder Exor's 65.4 stake was indeed rejected. The company kicked off 2026 by adding 8,888.88 Bitcoin to its treasury as part of its fourth quarter profit allocation. Holy shit. That's like a news story all by itself. The purchase, worth about $780 million at current prices, underscores a strategy that has quietly turned the world's largest stablecoin issuer into one of Bitcoin's biggest corporate holders. It reflects a policy introduced in 2023 under which Tether allocates up to 15% of its realized quarterly operating profits to Bitcoin, making it a systematic accumulator rather than a simple opportunistic buyer of Bitcoin. FT Partners served as financial advisors to LEDN on this strategic investment from Tether. So really, there's two things here when they announced that they were investing in LEDN, they said they didn't say how much. Now we know it's between $40 and $50 million, bringing the LEDN valuation to $500 million. Again, not bad for a company that essentially started out in somebody's garage. Okay, probably wasn't a garage, but you get the thing. But also this purchase by Tether itself of 8,888.88 BTC to its treasury. I mean, we're only 9 days in, and I am just now hearing about this, so I don't know when that occurred. But like I said, this story is actually covering two different stories all at once. So we'll have to keep our eyes on Tether. It makes me a little less nauseous about the whole gold and silver thing that Tether's getting into, because they are still clearly interested in accumulating Bitcoin instead of, just running away and saying, oh, we're going to FOMO into all this precious metals and blah, blah, blah. We're going to change our model and we're no longer a Bitcoin company. Because it's not a gut feeling. It's sort of like it raises the hairs on the back of my neck every time I think that, well, if we start losing OG Bitcoin companies, to traditional finance 100%, then, that doesn't make me feel good. So it's good that Tether is still purchasing extremely large amounts of Bitcoin. I know it should be out in the wind so that, everybody can actually use it, but it is what it is. Again, you can't control what Bitcoin's going to do, and you can't control how people are going to use Bitcoin. That's a feature and not a bug. So let's move on to VEXL. VEXL is empowering peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange through social networks. And this is Juan Galt out of Bitcoin Magazine. In an era where centralized exchanges dominate cryptocurrency trading, VEXL, VEXL, stands out as a peer-to-peer application designed to connect Bitcoin users within their personal networks for direct, non-custodial trades. The app facilitates buying and selling Bitcoin without intermediaries, emphasizing in-person meetings for cash exchanges, while also supporting fiat transfers arranged privately between users. As Willem Klamerik, I cannot pronounce that name, but he is the CEO of VEXL, He explained in an interview with Bitcoin Magazine, quote, "We are an application that helps people buy and sell Bitcoin directly with each other without any intermediaries and without KYC. VEXL works without custody, so peer-to-peer. But what's most important is that it's always within our own community, meaning we are not a global marketplace. We are, basically, a peer-to-peer notice board where you can connect with your first and second level degree of connections," end quote. At its core, VEXL prioritizes privacy, functioning as a high-trust notice board within your personal social network rather than an exchange. It does not escrow Bitcoin nor fiat. It does not hold user funds nor store balances, messages, or personal data. All communications occur via end-to-end encrypted chats, and trades happen off-app, placing the responsibility directly on users to verify their counterparts. This design aligns with VEXL's mission to support non-KYC Bitcoin acquisition in local economies, as confirmed on the app's official website, which states, quote, "We do not store any personal information or any of your messages, period." User connections in VEXL are built on a web of trust model, drawing from imported phone contacts to create a personalized order book. Ugh. Offers are visible only to first and second degree connections, your contacts, and their contacts, enhancing liquidity while maintaining high trust through shared social links. This limits exposure to strangers, reducing scam risks, and usernames remain anonymous until users mutually reveal their own identities. Klamerick noted, quote, "The biggest difference between VEXL and the other applications is, first of all, its web of trust, which means you don't trade with users. You trade with people with whom you are already connected through real social links," end quote. The app's privacy measures include hashing contact data and separating components like profiles, chats, offers, and contacts into microservices that converge only on the user's device, ensuring no centralized database can exist. To enable the system, VEXL requires a phone number for registration, serving as proof of humanity to deter bots and facilitating contact imports. Privacy concerns are addressed through encryption and hashing. As the website affirms, quote, "Your contacts always remain encrypted, which means no one can see them, not even us. The phone numbers are a big topic, and we are aware of that, and it's not perfect. But also, it's probably the best solution we have out there to build trust upon that," end quote. This mirrors mechanisms in apps like Signal and major social networks, primarily as a spam prevention and authentication tool. For users hesitant to import full contacts, particularly in privacy-focused regions like Germany, VEXL offers clubs. These are curated groups managed by local moderators, often meetup organizers. These act as public rooms where members can view offers without broad network sharing, though trust shifts to the moderator. So there ends up being just a bit of centralization there. Entry requires a one-time code or a QR scan, regenerable for security, providing an onboarding boost for newcomers until they build direct connections. VEXL is available on both Android and iOS, but iOS users face restrictions. The app is not officially listed in the App Store, limited to test flight beta slots or side loading in the EU due to Apple's claims of reckless behavior for encouraging in-person trades. Tinder, however, remains in iOS without restrictions, so just think about that shit. Android offers seamless access via Google Play and APK downloads, making it the optimal platform for unrestricted use. As a nonprofit under the VEXL Foundation, the app avoids for-profit models that could attract regulatory scrutiny, focusing instead on donations and grants to preserve its peer-to-peer ethos. This structure reflects a broader trend in Bitcoin privacy tools where governments have effectively criminalized for-profit operations. Samurai Wallet's founders were sentenced in 2025 to prison terms for money laundering conspiracy and unlicensed transmission after facilitating over $2 billion in transactions via a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet. No, they did not act. If I remember right, the Samurai guys did not go down for money laundering, because if they did, they would have been in for 25 years. The unlicensed money transmission charge, however, is what got them a 5 and 4 year sentence, respectively. I think William Hill got 4 years and Rodriguez got 5. All right, but if they had been under the money laundering charge and got convicted, it would have been like 30 years, because it'd be 25 plus 5. And that judge at SDNY, the Southern District of New York, basically always gives out the maximum sentence that she possibly can. I can't stand this person. So I just wanted to make that correction there. Then Tornado Cash faced U.S. sanctions in 2022 for billions in volume, accused of money laundering themselves for a service that profited from giving Ethereum users basic financial privacy. And these cases highlight just how privacy-focused entities are opting for nonprofit status to sustain operations without attracting the ire of regulators. VEXL is fully open source and is a project by Satoshi Labs, which is the creator of the Trezor hardware wallet. Looking ahead, Klamaric signaled expansion. Quote, "This year is hopefully going to be the year where we actually go overseas and also focus on markets outside of Europe when it makes sense." All right, so this is not what I thought. This is not being able to trade Bitcoin through, like some kind of, I don't know, some ability to trade Bitcoin through Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and whatnot like that. It does seem to be its very own ecosystem, and that always presents a problem because everybody's used to just being on Twitter. This is, and while I applaud what the guys over at VEXL are doing, as well as the way that they're doing it, I don't like the phone number, but what are you going to do? You've got to be, in this particular situation, you're going to have to give up something that says, yes, I'm a human being, and at least it's not your picture. At least it's not a photograph of your driver's license, right? At least it's just your phone number, even though I get it, all right? But that said, we do have nostr. Now, it's not trading. It's not exactly like setting up a situation where we're trading Bitcoin, although I guarantee you, given the nostr protocol, somebody somewhere is going to build that. But we can do zaps. We can appreciate each other by sending, zaps of Satoshis. Some of those zaps can be rather large, and some of them are just like 1 or 2, and then there's like everywhere in between. But we already have the ability to at least send and receive Bitcoin directly through the nostr protocol. If you're not on nostr, you might want to consider actually doing that. And at this point, all you got to do is Google NOSTR. That's how you spell nostr. It is not NOSTER, it's NOSTR. That would be nostr. If you're not on it, you need to go there and claim your namespace. And then you're going to go to GreatGhee.com, where you can get some great ghee. What the hell is ghee? No, seriously, do you even know what the hell ghee is? Ghee is clarified butter, right? And when you go to GreatGhee.com, and let's see, do I have I'm pretty sure I got a deal worked out with GreatGhee over here. No, I don't. But he does need to know that if you buy his clarified butter, that you heard about it here on the BitcoinAnd podcast. So use the code BitcoinAnd. If he's got a coupon code place or anywhere in the note when you actually order, just say, hey, BitcoinAnd. That lets GreatGhee know that you heard about it here on the Circle P. It's where I bring plebs just like you that have goods and services for sale to plebs just like you who want to buy those services, but you will be buying it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P as one of the Circle P vendors. GreatGhee has this great stuff called ghee. made from grass-fed butter in Southwest Virginia in small batches. It's sourced exclusively from completely unvaccinated grass-fed cows that live on regenerative agriculture single-family owned farms, stored in American-made glass jars with American-made metal lids. You have never cooked with a fat like this. And that's what this essentially is. Clarified butter is simple animal fat. It doesn't have any of the milk solids in it. It doesn't have any of the residual sugars in it. It doesn't have any, most of the water has been taken out, because what you do is you melt a whole bunch of butter and you just kind of let it simmer. And that cooks out any residual solids like the milk solids, sugars, stuff like that. And what you're left with is this beautiful oil. And that oil, it's shelf stable, which means that you don't have to refrigerate it, right? So you just keep it on the shelf. This is a very old technique of animal fat food preservation. Right? It's like, you see it all the time in Indian cooking. If you like Indian food, you're going to need to use ghee to get that flavor profile in your Indian food. And by the way, you can use it on freaking anything. If you're using fat to do something like, like braise or to sear steaks or pork chops, or you're using fat to cook, chicken, like a chicken cacciatore, dude, instead of butter, or God forbid, instead of canola oil, just use ghee. It deepens the flavor profile, and you can get yours from GreatGhee.com. Make sure you use the coupon code BitcoinAnd. That way he will be able to get me back on the other side with Satoshis for whatever he thought that sale was worth. Now, BNY Mellon activates tokenized deposit service for payments and collateral. Brian Danga from The Block brings us this one. Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, the world's largest custodian bank, launched a tokenized deposit service for institutional clients, according to a January 9th Bloomberg report. The service creates a blockchain-based representation of client deposits held at the bank. Oh, God. Okay, so first of all, I need to pause because I just saw something. This story from theblock.co states that BNY Mellon is a custodian of $57.8 trillion in assets. $57.8 trillion. I don't think that's right. I don't think BNY Mellon is a custodian of $57.8 trillion. I think it's probably more like $5.7 trillion in assets. That sounds like, better to me, but $57.8 trillion, I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that. I think the block needs to go back and fact check that shit. Anyway, the launch converts an exploratory effort into a live financial utility. The development follows the block's reporting last October that BNY Mellon was exploring, oh my God, tokenized deposits to ease legacy payment constraints in its treasury unit, which processes about $2.5 trillion daily. Tokenized deposits are distinct from stablecoins, as they are direct, interest-bearing liabilities of the issuing bank. BNY said in the report that the service is designed for use in collateral and margin transactions with programmable features enabling automated settlements to make payments faster. The bank is working towards 24/7 operability, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Quote, this is very much about connecting traditional banking infrastructure and traditional banking institutions with emerging digital rails and digital ecosystem participants in a way that institutions trust, Carolyn Weinberg, BNY's Chief Product and Innovation Officer, told Bloomberg in an interview. According to the report, initial clients of BNY's tokenized deposit service include Intercontinental Exchange, Citadel Securities, DRW Holdings, Ripple Prime, Bailey Gifford, and Circle Internet Group Incorporated. A spokesperson from ICE confirmed to Bloomberg that the Fortune 500 company will work to support deposits across its clearinghouses around the clock. So they're definitely going 24/7. And BNY's launch lands as large financial institutions accelerate tokenization efforts following the passage of the U.S. Genius Act. While tokenized deposits sit inside the banking system rather than alongside stablecoins, most banks view the legislation as a source of certainty for building blockchain-based payment and settlement infrastructure. BNY Mellon CEO Robin Vince has publicly positioned the bank to capitalize on this shift. In a CNBC interview following initial reports of the bank's exploration, Vince called digital assets and tokenization a megatrend that the bank is attaching itself to. He stated that regulation, once a drag, had become a bit of a tailwind under the current administration. BNY Mellon enters a field where other global banks are advancing similar projects, like JP Morgan Chase and Company, which began offering blockchain-based deposit accounts in 2019. Started rolling out its JPM coin to institutional clients in November. And then earlier this week, JPM Morgan announced it would issue its deposit token directly on the privacy-focused Canton network. HSBC Holdings PLC also plans to expand its own tokenized deposit service to corporate clients in the United States as well as the United Arab Emirates in the first half of this year, while Barclays PLC bought a stake in stablecoin startup Ubix earlier this year to explore, quote, tokenized money. That's the end of that article. And nothing stops this train. And you can also not allow yourself to believe that you can keep the stupid people off that train. There's a lot of shit coinery that's coming up, guys. It just is. And we keep thinking, I keep hearing people saying that at one point or another, altcoins and shit coins are going to go away. And I keep telling everybody, no, they're not. You're going to have to figure out a way to mentally deal with the fact that stupid shit is always going to exist. Like Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. And so will the stupid. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Well, energy not looking so terrible today. Again, I guess there's a little bit of an uptrend. It's global macro is what's driving this right now. It's not as much about how much oil we actually have, how many reserves there are, how much we pumped out of the ground. That always drives this shit. But the other side of the story driving energy prices is always, who are we at war with? Who's next? What's going to happen? This probably has something to do with Iran. Who freaking knows? And of course, the whole thing going on in Venezuela. But meanwhile, Brent North Sea is up 2 1/3 points to 63.46 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate up 2.6, back to 59.28. Natural gas acting as the hedge, 5.72% to the downside. Back down you go, you little bitch, to 3.21 US dollars per 1,000 cubic feet. And gasoline is up 1.18% to $1.78 a gallon, while Murban crude, everybody's favorite light sweet crude, is up 1.86% to 63.48, 1 penny behind Brent North Sea. Metals are all in the green today, as you might imagine. Palladium is up 4.13%. Gold is up 1% to 45.06 and 9 dimes. Platinum is up 1.3. Silver is up 5.8%. Back to 79.50 you go. Copper is up 1.84%. Ag is fully mixed today, but chocolate just fell off a cliff. Biggest loser by 12.59 points. Oh my God. Biggest winner today is lumber, 0.5 point to the upside. Meanwhile, live cattle is down 0.84%, lean hogs down 1/4, and feeder cattle down just over 1 full point. The S&P is up 2/3 of a point. NASDAQ is up 0.9. The Dow is up almost 0.5 point, while the S&P Mini out in the lead by 0.84% to the upside. And $90,720 per Bitcoin gives us a $1.81 trillion market cap. We can now purchase only 20.1 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,973,463.66 of, and fees remain the same at 0.02 BTC in fees on a per block basis. 29 or about 30 blocks carrying 62,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priorities of 1 sat per VByte. Low is going to get you in at 0.2 sats per VByte. And hash rate is still in zettahash, 1.03 zettahashes per second, although that does represent a little bit of a drop from the last few days. Now, from the Tariff Sheriff, yesterday's episode of BitcoinAnd, Jason High with 250 says, thanks for the news that we can use. You're welcome. Jason High with another 250 sat donation says, thanks for the show. You're welcome. I appreciate it. Jay with 2100 sats says, thank you. Thank you. Jay with another 2100 sats says, thank you. And God's Death 237 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. And we come to Tulips with 1,234 sats. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 sats. Tulips. Quick update from Germany. I've been working in the fiat mines from this land for 2 years, and let me tell you, most of the negative stuff you hear is compensated by 30 days of vacation on average. He's not lying. That's standard fare in Europe. 30 days, like a month. And a lot of Europeans, not all of them, but a lot of Europeans take the entire month. I can't remember. I want to say it's September, but I could definitely be wrong. It could be June. But it's like Europe just closes down because nobody's working. And they close down for like a month because everybody's got 30 days vacation. So he's not lying about that. Germans flee their land on winter and get their freak on all over the planet. The German tourist meme is real. They wake up early and put a towel on their beach chair at 5 a.m., effectively reserving it for the rest of the day. 30 vacation days means a month and a half if you add the weekends. No wonder they are constantly recharged and efficient. He may not be wrong about that either. German wages are super high compared to almost any other land, of course, except Switzerland, the USA, and the UAE. So they live like kings abroad, and I repeat, they get their freak on. Having time and money is what makes you rich. Anything else is just tulips. Yeah, that's true. But Europe is still fucked. And one of the issues that Germany is having is that they have been acting as the economic generator for the vast majority of the European Union for something like 15 to 20 years. And it's gotten really bad. It got really bad during and immediately after COVID. And as far as I know, Germany is still acting as the primary economic engine of the whole of the EU. That's not sustainable. It's just not. And I'm not saying Tulips is still right about high pay and 30 days and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm getting at. What I am getting at is that at one point or another, something's going to break. I don't know when, but something's going to break. The EU's kind of jacked. Now, that doesn't mean that Germany itself is jacked. It just means that right now, to me, it seems like the rest of the European Union, and I'm not talking about the citizenry. This is all caused by the individual governments like France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, whatever, whoever's in there. It's not their citizens. They don't suck. They're just regular people, but their governments are acting like fucking parasites. And they're just, it's like, I just see a bunch of leeches all over Germany, and at one point or another, you're going to suck that son of a bitch dry. Nobody wants that shit to happen. So I'm just saying. Nick Dose with 126 says, cheers. Pies with 121 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. And that's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. On to Colombia, where new tax reporting requirements have been given to exchanges. Atlas 21 brings us this one. Colombia's National Tax and Customs Directorate has introduced new regulations requiring digital asset operators to collect and report sensitive data on their customers. Resolution 000240, issued December 24th, 2025, Merry fucking Christmas, Colombia laid the groundwork for a comprehensive monitoring system covering activities related to Bitcoin, Ether, stablecoins, and other cryptocurrencies. And according to Notícias, the regulation obliges exchanges, intermediaries, and platforms operating in the country to provide extensive information to tax authorities. The required data includes account holder identification, transaction volumes, the number of cryptocurrency units transferred, the market value of those transactions, as well as net balances. The stated objective is twofold: to prevent tax evasion. Oh my God, you're going to evade the taxes, and to increase traceability across the sector. DIAN's move, and that's that whole digital asset, or rather National Tax and Customs Directorate is DIAN. I don't know why they call it that, but whatever. That move fits into a broader global effort toward regulatory harmonization. I don't call that harmony. You may be singing the same song, but you're singing death metal. And, it's not harmony. It's just like, blah, blah, I gotta kill. It's these people are all thieves. They want to know what you have so they know how much they can take from you without your permission. I'm just saying. Anyway, the Colombian resolution is aligned with the crypto assets reporting framework developed by the OECD, the International Reference Standard for Digital Asset Reporting, and the provisions apply to both domestic operations as well as foreign entities that offer services to Colombian residents or taxpayers. While the resolution entered into force immediately at the end of 2025, the reporting obligations officially begin with the 2026 tax year. According to the compliance timeline, the first full report must be submitted by the last business day of May 2027. Before this resolution, individual cryptocurrency holders in Colombia were already required to declare their digital assets and related gains in personal tax returns. However, there was no third-party reporting obligation, leaving taxpayers solely responsible for accurate disclosures. The regulation also introduces a penalty framework, of course, to ensure effective compliance by operators. Failure to submit the required data or the submission of inaccurate information may result in fines of up to 1% of the value of the undeclared transactions. According to an analysis published by Chainalysis last October, Colombia ranks as the 5th largest cryptocurrency market in Latin America by transaction volume, with a total of $44.2 billion recorded between July 2024 and June 2025. So Colombians being hammered like all the rest of the citizenry of the world. The people that are in charge are organized crime. That's just the way this is. Oh, but they give us the roads. We had roads before. We had roads before tax reporting. We had roads before taxes. We had roads before tariffs. We had roads before all kinds of shit. You know, it's not that hard to build a fucking road. It's just not. Who's going to build the bridges? Then don't build one. Go around. The whole roads argument is just stupid. Plus, by the way, if you are one of those people that says who will build the roads, here's the answer. You will, and it's not by your income tax. Your income tax does not pay for the roads. That's inside the gasoline tax that every American pays every time they pull up to a pump. There's a lot of revenue. Those mostly go directly to the state because the states in general are more than the federal government building that state's roads. Is there federal money for roads? Yes, but you don't really depend on it. It may be for big heavy infrastructure stuff like interstates. That's kind of like the federal government's game, but still a lot of that repair work and building work is actually taken care of by the state through fuel taxes, not income taxes. So please stop with all that shit. As far as is one tax better than another one? Well, no, it's all highway robbery. See what I did there? But I would much rather be able to say, you know what? I'm just not going to buy jeans today. And I know what you're saying. Well, you can't just not buy gas. Well, if you do it right, you kind of can. If you have a job and you don't want to build your own job where you have to go to work, then yes, you are at the behest of everybody telling you that you got to go buy gas. And it may suck, and believe me, ask me how I know, building your own business where you're not required to drive into an office puts you in the catbird seat of being able to say, do I want to pay the highway tax by buying gas today? Doesn't mean that I won't at one point or another have to buy gas. Of course I will. But do I have to do it every other day because I'm driving so much? Right? I'm just keep it in mind. You have the power to build your own thing. Does it mean that it's going to work? No. Does it mean that it's not going to suck? No. Does it mean that you can be successful? Yes, absolutely. You possibly can. I'm still waiting for it. But before we get there, we're going to have to run over to South Korea, where they are preparing to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF in crypto policy pivot. Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine, says that South Korea is preparing to open its financial markets to spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds this year, marking a shift in the country's long-standing approach to digital assets as regulators accelerate work on a comprehensive new crypto law. The plan was outlined in the government's newly released 2026 economic growth strategy, with the Financial Services Commission taking the lead on the implementation. If it is approved, it has to be approved. Spot Bitcoin ETFs would become available to domestic investors for the first time, placing South Korea alongside markets such as the United States and Hong Kong, where similar products exist. Until now, Korea's capital market rules have not recognized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs as eligible underlying assets for ETFs, effectively blocking any launch of that kind of product. That stance is now changing as policymakers look to bring more crypto activity into regulated channels and reduce the flow of capital to offshore platforms. The Bitcoin ETF push is moving in parallel with a broader overhaul of digital asset regulation. The FSC is fast-tracking what it calls Phase 2 digital asset legislation, a bill expected to focus heavily on, of course, stablecoins. According to government plans, the law will introduce a licensing system for stablecoin issuers, minimum capital requirements, and strict reserve rules requiring at least 100% backing of issued tokens. Issuers would also be required to guarantee user redemption rights. Regulators say the framework is designed to prevent failures like the 2022 Terra Luna collapse, which wiped out $40 billion and has deep ties to South Korea. Alongside domestic rules, authorities are drafting standards for cross-border stablecoin transfers and transactions, reflecting growing use of digital tokens in trade and remittance. The effort is being coordinated between the FSC and the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Officials point to global precedents as a key influence, like the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US and Hong Kong, seeing strong demand, with major asset managers now treating the products as mainstream investment tools. Korea's Financial Intelligence Unit estimates that more than 10 million people are eligible to trade digital assets domestically, underscoring the scale of potential demand, and might I add myself, the scale of potential theft by the government. Yeah, because you didn't do anything, but yeah, you deserve the money. Beyond private markets, blockchain is also moving into public finance, The government plans to digitize part of the national treasury using so-called deposit tokens, a form of government-linked digital currency distinct from stablecoins, according to reports. Now, by 2030, up to 25% of treasury ops could be conducted via blockchain-based payments. Pilot programs are underway, and lawmakers are reviewing amendments to the Bank of Korea Act and the National Treasury Act to establish legal foundations for these systems. Officials say that the goal is faster settlement, lower admin costs, and improved transparency. Yeah, you want it to be transparent because you want to know how much money that you can just go take from people. Sorry if I keep beating that drum, but until people get it through their head, the governments have no right to your property. If you think that they do, then you can consider yourself fully brainwashed. They offer a service. Maybe it's, social services. Are you required to take part of those? For some of them, no, you're actually not. So why would you pay for something that you don't take part of? But you are through taxes, and they take them from you. And if you don't pay them, they'll put you in jail. All right. So that's violence. That is violently taking your property away from you without your permission. There is nothing about that sentence that is anything other than described as what? Theft. And staying with South Korea, we got another one here. So they're going to get Bitcoin ETFs. Ooh, it's going to be great. Is it? Well, South Korea, the Supreme Court has upheld the legal nature of Bitcoin confiscation from exchanges. So now you got a Bitcoin ETF? Oh, you did something wrong? You didn't pay your taxes? Oh, they're just going to take it from the exchange. Not just your spot Bitcoin. I guarantee you this is going to be for any cryptocurrency product. They're just going to be able to say, oh, you did something wrong. We'll contact the exchange that, custodies your property, and we're going to tell them to give it to us. That's why you should always self-custody your Bitcoin. You should never buy a Bitcoin ETF because why? Unless you are institutional grade, you don't need a Bitcoin ETF. You just need actual Bitcoin, and you need to hold it yourself. This story is also from Atlas 21. According to Chosun Daily, South Korea's Supreme Court has issued a ruling that unequivocally establishes the authorities' power to seize Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies held on centralized exchanges. That is bad news. The legal dispute stemmed from a money laundering investigation during which law enforcement seized 55 Bitcoin from an exchange account registered to an individual identified as Mr. A. At the time of the confiscation, the total value of the digital assets amounted to approximately $410,000. The account holder challenged the legality of the action by filing a motion for reconsideration with the Seoul Central District Court. The defense argument was based on an interpretation of Article 106 of South Korea's Criminal Procedure Act, claiming that the seizure of Bitcoin was unlawful because the asset does not constitute a tangible physical object and therefore falls outside the scope of evidentiary seizure provisions. After the motion was dismissed by the court at first instance, the claimant appealed to the Supreme Court last December. The country's highest court upheld that lower court's decisions, definitively rejecting the appeal. The Supreme Court clarified that under the Criminal Procedure Act, the objects of seizure include both tangible items and electronic information. The judges further explained that Bitcoin, as an electronic token capable of being managed, transferred, and independently controlled in terms of economic value, clearly falls within the category of assets that can be seized by courts and investigative agencies. This ruling fits within a broader line of case law that has progressively recognized digital assets as fully fledged property under the law. As early as 2018, South Korea's Supreme Court had ruled that Bitcoin constitutes intangible property with economic value and may be confiscated if acquired through criminal activity. And in the same year, digital assets were recognized as divisible assets in divorce proceedings. In 2021, a further ruling clarified that Bitcoin represents a virtual asset that embodies economic value and constitutes a proprietary interest under criminal law. South Korea's approach to Bitcoin seizures reflect a global trend toward the legal recognition of digital assets. Last month, the United Kingdom passed legislation formally recognizing digital assets as property, granting them the same legal status as traditional forms of ownership. The UK legislation, developed on the basis of recommendations from the Law Commission of England and Wales, provided a statutory foundation for legal principles previously developed through common law. Its aim is to provide clarity and enforcement in disputes involving theft, succession, and insolvency related to crypto assets. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Here we have governments and governmental institutions and institutions that are heavily regulated by governments admitting Bitcoin has value, Bitcoin is money, Bitcoin is property, and that's good. But there's always two sides of the blade, right? And this one, both of them are sharp. That recognizing Bitcoin as property and having economic value that can make a deep cut. So they're balancing that on the other side of that sword by saying, and because of its legal stature, we have the ability and the legal force to be able to take it. See, and I know I'm going to say it. If government didn't exist, like for instance, let's say we got to the point where humanity, the citizenry of the world, people as just being people who want to just live their lives, fall in love, have children, watch their children, have their own children, hopefully 4 or 5 generations of that shit before they, end up 6 feet under. If they had said, if anybody in this group of people that we're in, and not just one person saying it, they would have to collectively say it, make a decision that says, if anybody says, there should be a government, then that person is either immediately killed or essentially ostracized from that particular society, to make it to where nobody ever wants to utter the words, hey, this small group of people should be able to be in control of this larger group of people, to make them scared to think it, to make them scared to say it, to make them literally go, that passage, that way of living in humanity is no longer available to us. Well, if that had happened, we wouldn't be where we are. It seems to me that it's human nature to extinguish your ability to control a great amount of your shit and give that control to somebody else. And inevitably what happens? Corruption. Taxes are basically a corruption of what people that are in control of other people ought to be doing. They should, if you have to have government, then the small group of people ought to be protective of the property of the larger group of people, for the larger group of people, not figure out new and exciting ways to take their shit. And that's where we are now. Taxes and a great guts and feathers of how government operates today is essentially a corruption of what ought to have happened. And that's always going to happen. The only way to guard against that is literally to have a global society that says, if you even utter the words, I should be able to tell you what to do, you're automatically extinguished. That's the only way, and that's never going to happen, which is sad. But as long as we can figure out, well, what would have to happen for this no government in existence to occur? That's what would actually have to happen. What would be the ramifications? You wouldn't have a lot of the shit that you have. And there's a short-sightedness there. You know, it's like I can talk to anybody alive right now, and they were anybody I talk to, including somebody who talks to me, is going to be dealing with the same shit. Got 80 years. That's our lifespan. We can only look to our first memories, and we can only look to where we think we're probably going to die. And a lot of people say, well, 76, 80, somewhere around there for people in the United States. I know that number's actually lower, but a lot of people I know actually live that long. What I'm saying is that gives us a timeline context, and it's very difficult to look beyond your first memory, like to where things happened before that, and to care about them. And it's very difficult to look beyond your own death and to care about that. Although I presume that it's a little bit easier than looking beyond your first memory back into the past. What happens here is that you get people that are very protective of their time on this planet. And they should be, but in this particular case, it's like, I don't give a fuck what happens to me after I die. I want people to print as much money so that the money that I've already made somehow or another is protected. I've had that said to me recently in literally almost that exact. I'm glad that Bernanke did what he did. You know, I'm glad that they printed a fuck ton of money. And I'm like, you do realize that they destroyed the value of the money that you actually hold. They don't fucking care. That's not what they're looking at. That's just not what they're looking at. It's like it's almost as if our lifespan defines the context that gives us the reason why we don't have long time horizons. We can remember our first memory, and we know when we were born, and we can look forward to maybe 74, 76, 80 years on this planet. And that gives us this very short-sighted view of fucking everything. So therefore, the ability to look at a system without government is almost an alien concept to everybody on the planet because we've been doing it for so long. Why wouldn't we do it any other way? And if we did do it another way, and you did figure out you're not going to have the same kinds of shit that you have right now, nobody wants to hear it. So what happens? We keep doing the same thing. And in my opinion, it all boils down to the fact that we cannot see past our first memory, and we don't give a shit about what happens after we die. Unless you're this chick. Masked gunmen tie up woman in France and steal crypto USB. Vismaya V is going to bring it to us from decrypt.co. 3 masked men, not just one. 3 masked men broke into a home in Monesque, France. I'm sure I mispronounced that. On Monday, tying up a woman at gunpoint and stealing a USB drive containing her partner's crypto data. The incident occurred at a residence on Chemin Champs des Pyrénées in Alpes-de-Haute province, according to a French outlet, Le Parisien. The assailants threatened the victim with a handgun and slapped her. Oh my God, slapped her before taking the USB and fleeing. The victim, who was reportedly unharmed, except for the slap, I guess, managed to free herself within minutes and contacted police. An investigation has been opened and entrusted to the local criminal investigation department of the Regional Directorate of the National Police. Last year, Jameson Lopp, CTO of the security firm Casa, documented over 70 crypto-related wrench attacks globally, with France emerging as a European hotspot for violent crypto-related crime, with more than 14 such incidents reported. So 14 out of 70 just in France is that's a pretty high ratio, man. France's combination of a relatively high baseline level of criminal activity, visible concentrations of crypto wealth, read that again, visible concentrations of crypto wealth. Don't tell people you have this shit. Among founders, traders, and public figures, and growing local expertise in digital assets creates a fertile condition for more opportunistic and organized crypto-related crime. Cybercrime consultant David Sayon Beck told Decrypt. Beck said it's reasonable to expect some established criminal networks in France to increasingly fold crypto into crimes when it offers better margins, faster cross-border transfers, or lower perceived traceability than cash or traditional banking channels. Quote, global liquidity markets that never close and the ability to move large amounts of money across borders almost instantly make crypto an attractive target for criminals. The case comes amid revelations that a French tax official was indicted last June for abusing access to state tax databases to identify potential targets, including cryptocurrency investors, and pass their personal information on to criminal actors. Well, let's come back to that. According to a separate report by Le Parisien, the official used internal tax software to search for addresses, income details, and family information unrelated to her duties in at least one instance preceding a violent home invasion. Judges said the searches could not be justified by her role, which focused on corporate taxation. So what was just said in the last couple of paragraphs? This chick that worked with and had access to state tax databases was able to define or to identify people that held crypto. Why? Because of these reporting regimes. You know, like people are just saying, okay, well, it's illegal not to tell them I have crypto. This is Europe. You know, it's France. It's European Union. So with MiCA and all the rest of that, now you own crypto. If you did the dumb thing and told people you actually own crypto, then they have your address and they know you have crypto. All it takes is one person by themselves with access to that database to be able to say, here's all the addresses of all the people that have crypto. And that would never have happened had it not been for the reporting requirements, which is government regulation. Government, again, pisses in the swimming pool. Everybody's having a great time. We're out in the sun. It's nice and hot. Everybody's cooling off. And here comes government. It doesn't matter whose. Unzips their fly, unleashes their freaking dragon, and starts pissing in the goddamn pool. They don't give a shit that you can see them. They want you to see them. They want you to know that they're pissing in your pool. And this is what happens. You get chicks, tied up and slapped around and have, her husbands or her partner, whatever you want to call it, have their property stolen. They knew where the property was. It wasn't even the person that owned the actual property in question wasn't even there. It was the partner, completely innocent. She didn't have anything to do with this shit. She's the one that gets tied up and slapped around because of government. It's their fault she was tied up and slapped around. It was also the perpetrator's fault. Let's say that. But that perpetrator, essentially at this point, you could say that government, the French government, was an accessory to this crime. And if you're an accessory to a felony in the United States, it's not like you get off with a slap on the wrist like, oh, you were an accessory, bad person, pay $100 and then go home. That's not the way this shit works. If you're an accessory to a fucking felony, you get years in prison if convicted as an accessory. The government was every bit an accessory to this crime. Don't think that they weren't. If they had not required the reporting, then this person at the tax office would not have been able to identify those people with cryptocurrency. They would not have had access to those addresses, and they would not have had the ability to give those addresses to somebody who actually doesn't give a shit about breaking and entering and hurting another human being. The government facilitated that. The French government facilitated that. And the French government was an accessory to the brutalization of this woman tied up in a chair and fucking slapped. And then people go, I can't believe you hate government so much. Why wouldn't you? They're accessories to crime, if not the full-scale primary reason for crime, aka taxes and a whole bunch of other shit. Dropping bombs on brown people at a fucking wedding after they took my money to go buy the bombs to do it. I'm sorry, you're making me an accessory to crimes. You're forcing me to be an accessory to crimes against humanity. I I don't remember ever signing a piece of paper that said, yeah, I want to kill all these civilians. Here's my money. I don't remember doing that. I do remember having to cut checks to the government. And I do know that a lot of that, if I actually break it out by percentage that goes to the Department of Defense, or now I guess it's called the Department of War, I know that they paid to have those bombs built. And I know they structured the sorties and the missions to actually go drop those bombs. And I know that a lot of civilians have been killed over the years due to the fact that the money that I provided the government was used to produce bombs and pay payroll to people that planned those attacks. You forced me to be an accessory to a crime against humanity. And I didn't sign up for that. This woman did not sign up to be tied to a chair and slapped around and have her partner's fucking shit stolen. And then again, I want to reiterate, I wonder why people wonder why I do not like these governments. Why would I? I saw this guy. He was beating up on an 8-year-old kid out in the street. I really like that guy. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you had any self-respect, you'd go pull that fucking dude off and beat the living crap out of him yourself. But when it's government, they can do whatever the hell they want. And if you speak out against it, and this will be your own citizenry, then what kind of tinfoil hat wearing piece of shit are you? And I've gotten this. So let's be clear. These are not good people, and they do things for their own aggrandization, whether financial or just power-based, that do not help the best interest of the citizenry involved. And with that said, I will see you on the other side. This has been BitcoinAnd, and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.